Anthony Valerio is a successful and highly regarded writer of fiction and nonfiction. The literary critic Fred Gardafè places Anthony Valerio among the leading voices of a literary Italian America. And Robert Viscusi says that Anthony Valerio has reached a new height in the Italian American literature. Valerio has published several books, among which are The Mediterranean Runs Through Brooklyn, Valentino and the Great Italians, according to Anthony Valerio, and lastly, Conversation with Johnny. We will be discussing about these three books with Valerio, and let us now join him. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, how are you? Okay, now, right, and you're living in the village now, right?
One of the places I live is in Lower Manhattan.
Lower Manhattan, in the village. But you were raised in Brooklyn, right?
Yes, I was raised in Brooklyn. The immigrant pattern was, in my case, coming off the boat from Sicily and Naples. My grandfolks walked to Mulberry Street and Elizabeth Street. My mother was born on...
First generation.
Yes. My mother was born on Houston and Sullivan Street. And then what happened was, when the family got much larger, they moved to Brooklyn and bought a house in Brooklyn.
Whereabouts?
And I was raised in Bensonhurst.
Bensonhurst.
Infamous Bensonhurst. My route was a bit different, since I went to school and my problems really began, and perhaps even where I began. It's said, I think Fred Gardafè wrote that when I was 3, I went to a school and was punished a lot. And one of the forms of punishment was isolation. And so I began watching. So some writers have said that's where I began going to write. But the journey from Brooklyn has been very far. And however, I still hold and retain love for the people there and have written about it quite a lot.
Definitely. In the books, Bensonhurst, 74th Street and 4th Avenue.
75th Street and 16th Avenue, when the L comes around. And
that's your old neighborhood.
That's my old neighborhood.
I imagine, as many Italian kids today, they really don't have much from their own family that backs them up and encourages, due to the fact that we are basically white-collar people. So you really get to college and you still don't know sometimes what to do. But if I read it well, you also went to medical school, or you tried?
What happened was, and I'd like to comment about the support system, which, you know, I really feel is extremely important. Now, you have to understand where I come from. If someone said, I want to be a writer or an artist, I mean, it's completely unheard of. In fact, when I brought my first book home to my mother, my father had died, and I said, look, Ma, you know, a book came out. She said, put it on the refrigerator. And then she said, do you have a job? In other words, it's inconceivable what a writer does.
Different values.
But what's important is that if a young person, I care about this, if a young person has any artistic talent, I really would urge that the family and larger family support that person, a young man or a woman. And there is now a larger network of support. At that time, there was no support. I never had any support.
And tell me, you majored in French, you did some medicine. There was no Italian-American literature, or you did not know probably any Italian-American writer. When did you discover any? Let
me clarify. After I graduated from Columbia, I had a fellowship to go on to graduate school, but I wanted to leave the pattern. And at that time, one could go to a school in Italy, and it was free of charge. I never really attended medical school, really. It was free of charge. You get your libretto. And all you had to do was give one exam a year orally. So I would go in, give a psychology exam or orally, you know, because I had learned Italian, and then travel. It was in Italy, in my early 20s, and in Spain, that I began to write. I began writing with the feeling of an exile. I think I needed to leave home.
In order to feel.
And yes, I really needed to feel extremely homesick. I was very young and also somewhat exile-like. And
So-
that feeling continued.
So you began to write Italian-American literature before you knew any Italian-American?
Exactly. Well, look, this is also something that I think I would like to share with viewers who are Italian Americans who care about it. No, there really was not. I mean, of course there was Puzo in '72, but we're talking before that. You see, and the reason is that the writers, and there were Italian Americans, but they were not, how could I say, advanced. They were not supported. There were no people around like you to put people on the air.
Yeah.
Now, so my literary homeland really was Italy first. And then what I did was just go into a library and look for names that ended in vowels. And I'm suggesting even today that people interested in Italian-American literature or workers, cultural workers in the United States do the same, because the major media is not going to bring those people to your house.
You have to look for
Yeah,
them
you have to
yourself.
search it out.
That's the purpose also of this program, trying to make it more visible that there are Italian-American
Very
and
important.
good
Very
Italian-American
important.
writers. But my interest is to find out, when did you switch, or when did you know that you had a calling for writing?
My training was very different. You know, when I came back from Europe, there were no writing programs where you could get a job as a teacher. So what we did was we went into publishing. There was a route that Puzo took, Bruce J. Friedman, where you write the bubble dialogue and comic strips and so forth. So I was really a professional writer early on, but writing under other names, books to order, okay?
I
Like pretty much that, you might imagine, an artisan, but with words.
With words.
And then I began using my own name in 1977 when I published a story called The Skyjacker with the Paris Review. George Plimpton was my first editor. Well, right now, as we speak, my editor has a biography of Anita Garibaldi, who was the great Garibaldi's wife and mother of 4 children, and also a great warrior in her own right.
Her name was Anita Riberas from Brazil.
Anita Riberas, she was born in, well, it was also film interest because it's such an epic.
I see. You're beginning to write now with a view of possible preparation for scripts.
Do you
movie
know,
scripts?
I must tell you, I never even wrote to publish. I'm not that kind
just
of
wrote for
writer.
yourself.
Well, for myself, and there was an awareness of the community, the collective. But I've been fortunate in that I've been asked pretty much. Everything I've done really is been asked to do, and I conceive of it as a gift. That's how I conceive of the work.
I see. Now let us talk about these 3 books. You first wrote this one, the Mediterranean runs through Brooklyn. Okay, what is it about, briefly?
Mediterranean runs through Brooklyn, okay, which, by the way, is coming out in softcover at the end of this year or next year. Mediterranean Runs Through Brooklyn was written as a response to Puzo's The Godfather. In other words, in the book are family portraits, my mother, my father, my uncles, my aunts. And I wanted to paint a picture of a Italian-American family that to me was more, how could I say, real or common, rather than the romanticized gangster view of a family. And that was written in response to that.
All right, now we have Valentino. This is the second one, Valentino and the Great Italians, according to Anthony Valerio.